I warmly welcome you here on behalf of Stiftung Mercator to this side event around the nexus of climate change and security policy. We think, as a foundation, that strengthening the debate on the linkages between climate change and our security, we will be able to increase both the attention for the climate policy regime and also the security policy reactions to climate change. This is why we are glad to have Secretary Albright here with us. We are very curious to listen what you have to say. Madam Secretary, the stage is yours.
My thanks to Stiftung Mercator for hosting this important event today. The United States and our allies are facing the most vexing set of non-traditional security challenges, with the foremost, in my mind, being climate change. The reality is that climate change is no longer a far-off challenge, but an urgent threat that is already placing additional burdens on the societies and institutions of the world. Last year, the Pentagon took the historic step of labeling climate change as a top national security threat. While climate change does not cause conflict, it adds to the underlying pressures that cause global instability. What climate change ultimately represents is an existential threat to humanity on a par of what we faced during the Cold War. But unlike the Soviet missile threat, there really is no military solution for this problem, nor is there a unilateral or even a bilateral one. And I want to commend the work of the Stiftung Mercator in helping advance these discussions.
Julie, the Pentagon, maybe against its own will, has become the 911, or for a German audience, the 110 number, when it comes to global disasters, be it an earthquake in Haiti or a tsunami in East Timor. How is that being discussed within the House? That gray zone between development, disaster relief, and the military side of it?
On merging these worlds between national security and climate change. I mean, I think the problem has been for a long time that the people focusing on these two separate issue sets have essentially operated in separate orbits. And that means that, you know, the Asia team is over here doing their thing, the Middle East team, the terrorism team, but the climate experts have always sat separately from that group. Various think tanks in Washington started thinking and saying, wait, maybe we should get all the national security folks in a room and pair them with the climate experts. And they were able to start thinking more creatively about how to insert climate change into military doctrine. If you pull up today's national security strategy, climate change follows WMD and terrorism. I mean, it's actually in the security section.
Thank you very much. Let me turn it over to Christoph Balz. Obviously, the German discussion is coming from a very different direction. Why don't you give us a little bit of a run how you see things playing out?
It's only the last about 5 years that we started seriously to deal with climate change in our foreign policy. And looking to the individual human rights and to the social human rights, the right to food, right to water, and so on. Security forces are not the strong supporters of those social human rights issues. So, of course, we need the dialogue with those actors from two sides to get the right strategic approach.
I have a question about the securitization of climate change. Are you also aware of the dangers of securitization, this linking of climate change and security? Because I would say you shift away the attention a little bit from dealing with the causes of climate change to only reacting to symptoms.
Dealing with the consequences must be a human rights-based approach, and so far we don't have the structures there to do this. And on the one hand side, doing only with organizations like the Red Cross, dealing with those challenges will not be enough for doing this. On the other hand, dealing with the existing security structures will not be enough. So we have to be innovative here for new innovations on the institutional settings and in the cooperation between different actors.
We're not linking national security to climate because it's a convenient way to argue with Republicans that are climate skeptics. It has an added advantage so that Madam Secretary, when she's up in Congress, she can say, I think climate change is one of the top threats that we face, and that's important to bring that to the table.
I testified along with my two colleagues last week before the Armed Services Committee, and one of the things was they wanted a quick answer on what is the biggest threat. Kissinger and Schultz said, ISIS. I said climate change. I think they kind of looked at me, but I do think that. But it points to the issue that we need to rethink our institutional structures that are 70 years old. I'm older than that, but the bottom line is that basically there has to be some way to see how you do interdisciplinary work. That's what this is all about. And that we don't forget about the causes just because we're dealing with it in a particular venue.